Okay, we are recording. All right. Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, wherever you are in the world. Thank you for joining us today for our monthly Global Chamber Export Import Forum. I am the moderator, Anita Rodal, president of SBPI Services. Based in Southern California, I connect importers and global enterprises to the currency exchange company that best fits their needs for the cross-border payments. I am very proud to be a member of the advisory board for the Los Angeles chapter of the Global Chamber. And the Global Chamber, in case anybody isn't familiar with it, is a growing collaborative community of CEOs, executives, and business leaders in over 525 metro regions around the world. The Chamber's mission is to foster growth in cross-border business, trade, and investment in every region of the world by providing its members with warm introductions, valuable connections, and timely information. So during the webinar, I invite you to put your contact information in the chat. Please include your full name and the link to your LinkedIn page so it's easy for people to find you. And don't forget to save the chat. So let me tell you how today's forum will work. The first 40 to 45 minutes, I'll be interviewing our guest expert, and the last 10 to 15 minutes, we'll open it up for Q&A and conversation. And again, please keep yourselves muted throughout the first part of the forum. So today we are very lucky to have the amazing Gabriela Castro with us, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about her. Gabriela Castro is the founder and CEO of Trade in Motion. She has extensive experience in business administration, commercial affairs, foreign and international trade, research and analysis, and market development. She specializes in assisting and supporting companies expanding into North America. Gabriela has more than 20 years of experience developing new business ventures and more than 14 years of experience in the mining industry in Mexico, the US, and Canada. During her tenure at the Embassy of Canada to Mexico, she supported Canadian companies entering the Mexican market. Gabriela is on the advisory board of the recruiting company Mining Search and is the executive director of the Global Chamber Querétaro in Mexico. She is also a mentor on international trade at the Arizona Techcelerator, a premier business incubator focused on technological innovation and entrepreneurship in Arizona. Gabriela created Workforce in Motion to support companies in the US and Canada in need of STEM professionals and skilled technicians, while simultaneously creating opportunities for qualified Mexicans with interest in working in these two countries. Gabriela is a Mexican and American citizen who communicates fluently in English, French, and Spanish. Welcome, Gabriela.
Thank you, Anita. Thank you for the presentation, the introduction, and all the good things that you are saying about me. And I'm honored to be to be invited to your forum.
Yeah. By the way, so there you have it. Okay, so I'm going to start with my three little icebreaker questions that I ask all of my interviewees. And the first one is, what got you into your field?
When I was, as you mentioned, when I was working at the Canadian Embassy in Mexico City before moving to Arizona, because I live in the area of Phoenix, Arizona now, I was supporting Canadian companies to expand to Mexico, to do business in Mexico. So when I moved to Arizona, I opened my consulting firm as I knew both markets, the Mexican and the Canadian one, and I began to know and to get familiar with the American markets. So I opened my business consulting firm to help companies to expand to North America, Mexico, the US, and Canada. And I also created the Workforce in Motion program to give the opportunity to Mexicans to work in the US and Canada, or Canadians working in the US and Mexico. It's working in the three countries.
Win, win, win all around, which is great. Let's see, what do you like the most about what you do?
My purpose. Because my purpose in life is to make a meaningful impact on others, to transform lives, to create opportunities. So this gives me the opportunity for, in this case, for the program Workforce in Motion, to give opportunity to citizens from Mexico, the US, or Canada to work within the three countries. And also it gives me the opportunity to serve companies to expand and succeed in business, which of course benefit their people, the workers, the stakeholders, and the shareholders.
Okay, awesome. Now, flip side of that coin, what do you like least about what you do?
To see companies wanting to do business out of in these three countries in North America and not being successful, and seeing why they are not successful. That's what I like the least about my work, and also to see companies having workforce challenges and struggling for not finding the right talent.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, so now let's delve into what you do because it is so interesting. So, first question is this: what are the most in-demand skills or professions among Mexican talent for the North American market? And how does Mexico prepare its professionals for these positions, such as university programs, numbers of engineers graduated, etc.?
The most in-demand professions are concentrated in STEM fields and skilled technicians. So regarding engineers, I could say that it's mechanical, electrical, industrial, software, material science, cybersecurity, of course, biomedical, chemical, topographical, petroleum, and in mining, it would be mining engineers, metallurgicals, and geologists. And regarding skilled technicians, I could say that the most of the need is a specialization in manufacturing, automation, and instrumentation, among other specializations, and focus on mining, manufacturing, aviation, automotive, and semiconductors.
My goodness. So there's a whole lot of education going on there. Okay, great.
Exactly.
Yeah, I read somewhere or heard somewhere once that Mexico graduates more engineers than do they graduate more engineers than the US or it's a very high
Uh,
number, you know.
yeah, well, talking about numbers, there are 130,000 engineers or STEM professionals graduating in Mexico annually.
Oh my gosh. Okay, that's a lot. Okay, cool. Good to know. Thank you. Are there specific industries where Mexican talent excels or has a competitive edge?
Yes, as you know, in Mexico there are many international companies that expanded and open shop and are manufacturing. So there are some uh, industries that Mexicans excel, like automotive, aerospace, manufacturing, IT and software development, and mining. Only to give some numbers, in automotive, Mexico is the 7th largest vehicle producer globally. So companies rely on Mexican talent for producing and design. In aerospace, for example, Mexico is a growing aerospace hub with over 400 aerospace companies. So these companies, they leverage Mexican engineers and technicians for precision manufacturing and design. So these are only some examples where Mexicans are excelling.
Okay, that's amazing. Um, how do stem cell professionals and skilled technicians in Mexico compare to global standards in terms of their education skills and experience?
So Mexicans are well educated. They study in first class universities and colleges and also technical schools. Many engineer programs in Mexico adhere to the Accreditation Board for Engineering and Technology, which means that they are under international standards that we can say that these international standards make the Mexicans to be in the world-class workforce.
Okay. So a thought just occurred to me. Do a lot of foreigners enroll in university in Mexico for these programs as well? Do you know?
Can you repeat your question, please?
Yeah. So do a lot of foreigners enroll in these in the universities for these degrees, knowing that they produce such highly educated engineers? And
Yeah, there are some foreign students studying in Mexico, and of course there are many bridges between universities around the world. So I know that Mexicans study in other countries around the world, and other students worldwide go to Mexico and also to study for a semester or 1 year.
okay, cool, very cool. My cousin from Venezuela went to Mexico to study
Mm,
to be an eye surgeon. So it's like it's pretty great.
wow.
Okay, so let's see. Um, the US and Canada have their share of talent. Why should companies in the US and Canada consider hiring from Mexico instead of sourcing their talent locally?
This is a great question, Anita, because many people in the US and Canada, they think that if we bring foreign talent, we will be displacing or replacing the local talent. Contrary to that, according to my experience and talking to companies, while the US and Canada have a robust talent pools, several factors make hiring Mexican talent a strategic advantage. You can make teams of Mexicans and Americans, of Mexicans and Canadians working together, because at this moment the problem is finding the students. There are very good programs that the US have, and the US is developing to help the companies to succeed because of the shortage of STEM professionals and skilled technicians. But at the end, the students are not sufficient. The pool of students is not sufficient. So what I am doing with Workforce in Motion is not to displace or replace the talent, but finding the qualified and experienced candidate with high merit to grow the teams in these two countries.
Okay, that makes sense. That's very interesting. I would have, it's just to augment, it's not to replace. So that's
Exactly.
again, win-win,
Exactly.
win.
And I will give you an example. In Arizona, where I live, there are companies arriving to Arizona to produce, to manufacture, and it's very hard to find the talent. And there are another example here in Arizona is there is a program called Future 48 Workforce Accelerators, and it's an excellent program because it's customized training for in-demand jobs. And it's done together between the government, the Arizona Commerce Authority, and the community colleges. The thing is that they are looking for more students, and that's where foreign talent can come and work all together to help the industries to succeed. It's not, as I said, it's not a question of replacement. It's a question of support.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. Thanks. So what are the steps that are involved in recruiting talent from Mexico to work either in the US or Canada?
I will give you the steps that in the process that Trade in Motion uses for their clients. First, we have a discovery meeting to understand the challenges of the client, of the company. After, the company or the human resources department shares the job description of the positions they are looking for. We look for the right professional or technician in our database or if we don't have the right one according to the job description, we look for the right candidate among all our network. We check the documents and credentials when we find or when we decide who the good candidate is. And after I personally interview the candidate, they need to communicate in English, not only speak some English, they have to communicate in English. This is one of our requisites, that the talent speaks English fluently. After I share the resumes, when we have the right candidates, we share the resumes with the company and the human resources department. They choose the candidates to be interviewed. We schedule the interviews between the candidates and the companies or the human resources department. They select the candidates and send an offer letter. And if the candidate accepts the offer, we begin with the visa process. The only thing that the company is doing is to give an offer letter to the candidate and has a few involvement on the visa process. And it takes between 2 and 3 months for the candidate to arrive to the US or Canada.
So are you helping with the visa process and everything else? You have a team, I imagine, of people, and when you have a candidate, you then refer them over to the immigration attorney to work on the visa, etc. Unless they already come with, unless they're maybe dual citizens or something like that, and they have.
Yeah, exactly. I have a team with an attorney, and we work all together to help the company to have the talent as soon as possible.
Okay, all right. So you said you check your database first. So
Yes.
how did you grow that database? Like who's in there already and why?
I for 1 year, entire year, I was in Mexico visiting institutions, community colleges, schools, universities, talking to all the personnel to have the right talent and the best talent that they have. So I have a list of maybe 15 universities that I visited, and that's why I have at this moment 130 candidates already screened and interviewed, ready to come.
Wow, that's awesome. So do you do a lot of events where you will find talent to be constantly adding to your database as well?
I mostly visit universities. I'm in contact with universities. Of course, I have my partners in Mexico too. So we work together. They are in Mexico working, and I am in the US working. So all together, find the right talent.
Okay, cool. Do you have counterparts in Canada as well, or do you handle both of those?
I handle Canada and the US, and I have a team in Mexico, my partners in Mexico.
Okay, great. Fantastic. Okay, so let's see. So what about hiring remotely? Like how often do US or Canadian companies hire remote STEM professionals?
It's common to hire remotely. As you know, there are many different data centers in Mexico. There are some cities that are most popular, let's say, than others: Querétaro, Mexico City, Monterrey, Guadalajara. And I want to say like something about Querétaro, because Querétaro is a key data hub. Querétaro is the data center capital of Mexico. And I mentioned Querétaro because, as you mentioned at the beginning, I am the executive director of Global Chamber Querétaro. And we see how Querétaro is growing and helping companies also to invest and to hire remotely. I can, why Querétaro? Why Querétaro is the data center capital of Mexico? Because it's a strategic location near Mexico City, and the proximity to skilled talent pools who communicate in English is excellent.
Awesome, awesome. Can you give me 1 second? I'm so sorry. We'll edit this out. Give me one quick second. Someone keeps knocking.
I
So
put my
sorry. They
coordinates.
were I'm so sorry about that. Plumbing issues. Anyways, okay. So but just even if it wasn't a tech hub, if there was something that an engineer in Mexico could do remotely, like not not needing something hands-on, but just
Yeah.
didn't want to relocate, but was like the best candidate for the job. Are those opportunities there as well?
Yeah, sure. There are many opportunities of people working remotely, and there are, of course, you have to know how to do it. As I said, I have my partners in Mexico, but you can do it or through an employer of record, a payroll company, or you can hire directly the candidate, and you can use an automated clearinghouse to pay the person. There are ways to do it, but yes, it's common and it's very valuable to for the candidate and for foreigners, companies that are not in Mexico who want to have talent, well educated, and working in a different country in the same time zone.
Yeah, that's always helpful. Although I will say sometimes, just having a couple hours difference on the one hand can be annoying, but on the other hand, like maybe, the person in Mexico is getting a head start on the day, like maybe they're on like East Coast of Mexico and the hiring company's on the West Coast, so, you know, they get work done before the day in California even starts. So sometimes, it's good. I guess it just depends. Okay. Let's see. Whether the professional is hired to be remote or to move to the US or Canada, you sort of touched on this already, but what are the legal and visa related considerations that companies should be aware of when they're hiring Mexican talent? Like, you know what it is, and the attorneys know. How do you educate the hiring company so that they know what to expect?
When hiring Mexican talent relocating to the US or Canada, they need a work visa. The visa that we use is the TN visa because it's related to the NAFTA USMCA treaty, which makes things easier. This visa, as it's related to the USMCA, the citizens of the three countries, Mexico, the US, and Canada, can have a visa and work in the three countries, but they need a work visa if they want to come and work in the US. This visa is related to the company that is hiring the talent. It says the name of the company in the visa. So this talent can work only for this company unless another company wants to hire them, but they have to do all the visa process again.
Oh, wow.
And the visa is the visa is for 4 years. It takes 2 to 3 months to get the visa. Before it was 15 days, but there's so much demand at this moment that it takes now between 2 and 3 months. And the company is involved only to give an offer letter to the candidate, and after we do all the visa process and all what is needed to bring the candidate. And the second thing that that should be considered is when a Mexican arrives to the US, they need to have a social security number, a driver's license, and open a bank account. And for that, I have an onboarding program. I help the company to help the talent to establish in the US. And regarding hiring professionals remotely, as I mentioned before, they can hire someone through a company as an employer of record. The company would be the employer of record. The company is responsible for the candidate, and the Mexican company is responsible for the candidate, and the American company signs a contract with the Mexican company. This is one of the ways to go. And the other one, the second option, is to hire the candidate as a freelancer. And they can use an automated clearing house to pay the talent or to pay the engineer. And that's the way some companies are doing. In this case, they don't have, the American company does not have to pay taxes. The taxes are paid by the engineer or technician or the one doing the job.
Okay. Have you ever had anybody's visa declined?
Not at this moment. I think in 2019, when I began, yes, there was a geologist who had a visa decline, but the problem was that he didn't have his degree original, and you have to bring the original degree to the interview at the US consulate in Mexico to prove that you have the degree, and he didn't have it. He only had a copy. That's why it was denied.
So he never was able to rectify that and get the job?
The thing is that in public schools, if you, for the process to have your degree, if you didn't do it when you finish school, it can take 1 or 2 years.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Wow, that's too bad. Now what about family members? Say somebody's married and has a child. What kind of visas do the spouse and the child get, or do they?
Yeah, they get a visa. The visa, it's a TD visa, and it's related to the TN visa of the candidate. The family can study, the children can go to school, but the spouse cannot work. That's the only maybe downside, that the spouse can study and go to a university and study whatever he or she wants, but he or she cannot work.
Unless while she's there, she gets an offer and goes through the whole process herself, right?
Exactly.
Okay. All right. That's interesting. Okay. So what kinds of challenges do companies typically face when they're hiring international talent, and how do you help them overcome these issues, like cultural barriers, language? I know you said they have to be able to speak and communicate well in the language.
Yes.
So that would weed those ones out right away. But there are cultural differences, and that sometimes delays in showing itself, but sooner or later it does. And you know that because you lived in a foreign country, and I know that because I've lived in a foreign country. And sometimes you don't realize it until like a year in. You're like, well, I guess I am homesick, or oh, I guess that really does annoy me. So do you have some kind of support system for helping these people like understand the cultural differences from the get-go?
Yes, even though they have to go through this cultural difference, I did it in the US. As you say, I live in France, in Canada, and now in the US, and I went all over different cultural differences. Yeah, we support the talent. I am in contact with the talent at the beginning for the first 3 months, and I ask them, if you need something, please call me. But the cultural differences would be Americans are very direct, Mexicans are not. So sometimes I'm talking about my experience, maybe that I say sometimes it was hard. And I said, oh, okay, are you mad? No, the person is not mad, it's direct. And we Mexicans have tendency to not speak that direct. That's all. But on the other hand, Mexican workers are praised for their strong work ethic, the problem solving skills, and ability to collaborate in diverse environments. So I think that it's adaptability that we all need to do, and I think that we can work in the US and we speak the language, and more people from the living in states close to the border, they are more familiar with the culture.
And then probably a lot of them are of Mexican heritage.
Yeah, yeah.
So absolutely, they've grown up with it. Um, so I know that there's a lot of people from Mexico living in the, Arizona, Texas, California. Um, are you aware of large American populations, not the retired population, but just people who want to live in Mexico, um, because the cost of living is lower and such, um, that have relocated there for those purposes and send their kids to school there, or versus sending them across the border to San Diego? I know people that have sent their kids, they live in Tijuana and the kids go to school in
Yeah, yeah,
San
exactly.
Diego.
That happens, that kids are, you mentioned many kids have the dual citizenship and they live in Mexico, but they studied in the US, which is a great advantage. And vice versa, talking about business, I've seen a lot of foreigners, Americans, Canadians, from Europe too, moving to Mexico
Yeah.
for business purposes, and they bring all their families and they become part of the culture. They go to school, they eat tacos, they drink tequila or mezcal. So I think at this moment the world is so open and everything is so global that it's not complicated to go from one country to the other. I compare it with when I live in France. It was from 1994 to 1999. It was totally a different world. And now you see that with the communications, with social media, it's everything. We are so communicated that sometimes even the cultural differences are not anymore there, because you are so embedded with all the world and all the countries that it's not becoming a problem.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, we're already globalized to a large extent. And I think it's great too that, kids in college anymore, they all do a semester or a year abroad, which was unheard of in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, but it's standard practice now. So I think that opens a lot of people's eyes, which is fantastic. So, I know you touched on this a little bit in terms of how you find people, but what is your recruitment process like, and what support do you provide to ensure a smooth onboarding process for international hires?
As I mentioned before, first I meet with the company. The company sends the job descriptions. We look for the right professional. I have a big network. My partners in Mexico. I am in contact with universities, and after as I've already mentioned, I shared the resumes with the human resources department. They choose the right candidate, they interview the right candidate, they offer and they send an offer letter, and from there we begin with the visa process. The visa process is we need certain documents, as I said, original documents, because if they don't have the original documents, they cannot get the visa. The officer at the U.S. consulate in Mexico, they ask for original documents. We put everything in a packet. I send the packet to the candidate in Mexico, the packet that the attorney prepares. I check all the documents and I send it through DHL to Mexico. And that packet is the one that the candidate is bringing to the interview.
Will they accept a copy of his notarized and apostillado?
Yeah, the translations are done with a perito traductor, with a translator that has the right to put a seal in the translation.
Okay, but the original, what if they don't have the original, but they have a notarized apostillado copy of an original for the actual document?
They need the origin. They need the original document for their degree and what we name in Mexico cédula profesional. They need both original.
Wow.
That's why it takes time. If they don't have it, they have to ask for it. In private universities, they can get it in a couple of months, but in public universities, it takes time. So my recommendation for candidates who want to apply to the program Workforce in Motion, begin looking for your degree and cédula profesional in original.
Wow. And you might want to find a way to start educating the students themselves before they graduate to let them know they absolutely need it if they're thinking about, if there's ever going to be a time when they might want to work in a foreign market. That's amazing. Do the companies that you find the talent for, do they sign a contract with you, or what's their commitment to you? Because you put in all this work.
Yeah, they signed a contract with me. And when they sign the contract, I begin to find the talent for them. Yeah, we have a contract.
Okay, cool. And then for how long after the hiring and onboarding process has been completed, do you stay involved with the hired professional and or the company? Like, how involved do you stay with each side?
There's a 3-month of probation period. So I am in contact with the company and with the talent during those 3 months. And they can contact me at any moment, as I tell the candidates, please send me a WhatsApp message, a text, call me if you need something. And the company is the same thing. And anyway, I have an onboarding program that takes around 1 month to complete. We help with the social security number, driver's license, open a bank account, and find a place to live. So I am involved, at least really involved the first 1 or 2 months, because I have to help the candidate with all these 4 things that he or she needs to have to live in the US.
Okay, so I have a question because I don't know if all states are switching over to the real ID like we are in California. And if these people don't already have like a utility bill or something showing their permanent residence yet, is that a problem for them to get their driver's license?
No, it's not a problem. They need a copy of their passport. They have to show the passport, the visa that they are holding, and an utility bill. I think that it doesn't have to be under their name, because they are renting a place. So at this moment, with the candidate that I help with all this, the social security and the driver's license, he didn't need the utility bill under his name in Arizona.
Okay. Okay. Interesting. Okay. Alrighty. So it's almost 12:45 and we have a lot of people on the call. So I wanted to open it up to questions at this time. So everybody can go ahead and unmute themselves. If you have a question or want to raise a point or make a comment, you can raise your virtual hand by hitting Alt Y or use the wherever the icons are on
Oh, why?
this. They're probably somewhere there, but Alt Y always works. That's a hand raise. And I'm going to change my view to gallery. And you also would need to put your screen on, turn your video on if you want to make a comment, because I won't know you're there if I can't see you. So, Elizabeth, I see that you unmuted yourself. Do you have any?
Oh, well, I'll just share. Thank you, Gabriela. This has been very, very interesting. I will just share with the group. I do know that in the aerospace sector in Mexico, as you said, it's been expanding significantly. I learned that Safran, the French aerospace company, is the largest employer for the aerospace sector. So that shows the commitment. That kind of investment is huge for it highlights the quality of the people, the Mexican employees and professionals. The other thing that I was going to share is I actually have worked with a company, a business owner, an executive who shared with me that over multiple years he's hired well over 100 engineers from Mexico, and he says it's been phenomenal. Phenomenal. So there, in fact, his current director of operations, it's a woman. They brought her over, and she's now in a major position. So he says it's been a very positive for them. And then the last thing is Querétaro. I should have reached out to you. I was there on a trade mission in February, but I know that Querétaro, it's, as you said, it's very significant, and I know that they're integrating 7 industry clusters. So that integration and that coordination, it's amazing. I mean, there's a lot there. Mexico offers a lot with respect to professional talent, especially in the STEM and the engineering.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
That's a good testimonial right there.
Yeah.
Definitely. Does anybody else have any questions or comments? Turn your video on if you want to say something so I know you're there. No? Okay, so Gabriela, what didn't we cover that you want people to know? What else do you want to tell people?
Yes, I will tell you. But that's precisely what Elizabeth said. There's a lot of talent in Mexico. And if you need someone who will be working in a long-term schedule, I mean, the talent will have a visa for 4 years. So if you are looking to decrease the turnover, if you are looking for talent who will be working with you in a long term, I think that Mexicans are a good source of talent. They have a good work ethic, they work hard, they like to produce, they like to give the best. So that's what I would say. And Anita, okay, sorry, tell me.
No, I was going to ask you. So you also work with the mining industry. Do U.S. companies import talent from Mexico for that as well?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
what kind of mining though? Is it just broad in general, like anything that's being dug up from the ground?
Yeah. Yes. Exactly. Any mine, they can work in any mine, open pit or underground. But also I will give you an example. At this moment, I am bringing 7 geologists from Mexico to work in a project in Kelvin, Arizona. There is a company called Tempestas Copper. It's a company from UK, and they are opening a project in Kelvin, and we are bringing 7 geologists because the senior geologist is asking for them to bring. He wants to bring Mexicans to work with him.
Oh, wow, that's interesting. Are there any emerging industries that you feel that Mexico is preparing for in terms of their curriculums at the universities that because maybe that's an industry that Mexico plans on being top in?
Aerospace, I would say aerospace, automotive, manufacturing, but something very interesting is semiconductors because
Okay.
it's growing, and of course, in as you know, in Arizona, it's booming the semiconductors industry, and there are companies wanting to be in both sides, in Mexico and in the U.S. So there are universities, there are schools trying to have the curriculum or developing the curriculum for this industry.
I think that's something that Mexico has done so brilliantly is that they realized that if they could develop an industry down there, they needed to provide the brain power to run it. And I think initially what I heard was that they would bring engineers from other parts of Mexico up to the border areas where they have the maquiladoras, which for people who don't know, they have a special tax status both in the US and Mexico. The materials oftentimes come from the US. The stuff is manufactured there and has to leave within 90 days to avoid paying taxes. So even the banks operate differently on the US side at the border for those types of situations. But so they found that they could bring engineers up to northern Mexico, but if they were from a different part of Mexico, eventually wanted to go back. And that's when they really like went full on to develop the curriculums in the areas where those factories and everything else were going to be built so that it would be local students who became the local engineers. And they didn't have to keep replacing people because somebody missed being, from the part of Mexico that they're from. So just brilliant planning all the way around, quite honestly. It's
Yeah, and companies that are in both sides in the US and Mexico, they train their people and after they move it to the US because they are already trained. In Mexico, they already trained the same company, the same technology, and they move them to their facility in the US.
so let me ask you something. If you've brought an engineer, you've helped to bring an engineer over here, and I know the visa is for 4 years. Is that renewable after 4 years?
Yes, it's renewable.
So like they could keep renewing it every 4 years for the next 40 years?
Yes.
So in that case, they've got a wife that most likely at some point wants to work. The child is going to go to college and get a job in that time. So what's the process? Are you able to help them, the family members, even if it's not the original engineer? Can you help the family members get a work visa or a resident visa, something like
They
that,
have,
so they can?
yeah, I can help. Yes, I haven't done it yet. It's not yet. I'm not yet on that. It's in my plan, of course, because in some years when the visas will have to be renewed, what can we do? Because that's good for them too. To if they want to stay, how can they do it? So the
Right.
way to do it, they have to change their visa status and go through a different process. But yes, I can help with that if necessary, or if the candidate asks for, yes.
Do they have to leave the country to get that visa, or can it be done here while they're here?
They
Do you know?
have to go to Mexico because they have to pass an interview. That's the thing with Mexicans. They have to to have an interview in a US consulate in Mexico. In the case of Canadians, they don't have to. You can renew it in the US.
Wow, interesting. Okay. Okay, interesting.
But they have to go to
still
the
have to go for
embassy in Mexico, the US Embassy in Mexico. That's a requirement.
Yeah, US
That's
Embassy in
interesting.
Mexico.
So they can just make a day trip out of it, right? Because they're still here on their other visa. It's not like they have to go and stay and wait for the visa to be issued. Because the current visa isn't negated until the new visa is issued, correct?
Yeah, they can use the same visa until they renew the new one. Yes, exactly. Only if they are changing of employer and they have to leave the employer, they have to go to Mexico to renew, to go through the process again.
That makes sense. That makes perfect sense. So they should choose wisely, so they don't have to go through that and uproot.
Yeah, and that's what I tell them. I'm very transparent, and I said, check the job description, check the company, where the company is, because if the company is in Buffalo, if the company is around New York, they have to know that it's cold. They will be living in a cold place, and so that's what I said. You have to check everything. If you have to be sure, because if you are moving your family and you don't like where you are living, what are you going to do?
Mhm.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And not only that, I mean, a lot of people after however many years might want to do something different or, or work for another company. So it's certainly not without its challenges, but of course, where there's a will, there's a way. So
Exactly.
that
And it's
makes
a great opportunity for companies and for Mexicans. I think it's a win-win situation.
absolutely, absolutely. I agree. Okay, so we are almost out of time. So we're going to wrap up. And let me just say that I want to thank everybody for joining us today for the Global Chambers Export Import Forum. And a special thanks to Gabriela Castro for sharing your knowledge with us. We appreciate it. If you enjoyed today's discussion, I hope you'll join us again on the fourth Thursday next month, which will be February 27th. And make sure you check out the events calendar for the Global Chamber. The website is globalchamber.org. And of course, there's always something going on somewhere in the world. Like if you can't sleep at night, see if they're talking, if they have a conversation going on in Australia or something. So um, make sure you do that. If anybody wants to put their contact information in the chat, do so now before we finish up so that we can all save it. So don't forget to save it. And then we'll see you next month, hopefully. So we're going to keep the recording open for like another minute after we're done. But just remember, take care. And it's great to be global. So thank you, Gabriela.
Anita, I will tell you two words. At the end, I have my elevator speech that you trained me, Anita.
Oh, yeah,
If
I
you
didn't mention that. If it,
Yeah, Anita trained me. I took her elevator pitch training. Take it.
It's amazing.
It's worth it.
Agreed.
so much.
Are you going to give your elevator pitch? Is that what you were going to do, Gabriela?
My end elevator pitch.
Do it.
If you work with me, you will have someone committed to making a difference in your business. I will help you. If you work with me, you will have someone who believes the impossible is possible. I will challenge you. If you work with me, you will have someone who does what they say they are going to do. I will earn your trust.
You.
Very nice.
That's really powerful.
Thank you.
Great.
Yeah.
Is that
Awesome.
what we'd like to hear the before Anita and we've heard now the after Anita. Before Anita couldn't have been anywhere near as powerful as that.
Yeah. Thank you, Anita.
You're welcome.
Good.
And thank you for the accolade. Appreciate it. Doug, any final comments?
Well, I saw Chris, but I think he's left. Yeah, he did. So there's a
No,
new
just
event that,
clapping, Doc. It's just
oh,
clapping.
oh, that's a different Chris. Hi, Chris. How are you?
Hi. Well,
How are you connected? Oh, okay. We lost you. I saw Chris Bennett, and he's added a global law conversation that I think is monthly, although I saw something today that was a weekly conversation on Fridays. So that's pretty extreme if it ends up being weekly, but at least once a month it kicks off this Friday, and it's kind of different perspectives of the law. And so
my
this
God.
year, we're doing some really great programs regularly on, in addition to export import, we've got the law one, we've got one on logistics, we've got one on leadership, we've got one on marketing, we've already had one on sales. And I'm sure there's some other ones, but the periodic, regular cadence of really important topics when you're doing international business are going to increase this year. And so, Anita, thank you for your leadership in getting us to have one of the most essential aspects of what Global Chamber is all about, and that is importing and exporting. You're great.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And thank you for the opportunity to be able to reach people and talk about this. So win-win. We always love win-win. All
The
right, everybody.
wins are good. Thanks,
Wins
everybody.
are good and being global is great. Thanks, everybody. Have a great
Global is
week.
great. Bye.
Yes.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.